All right, let's get it kicked off. Open Line Friday officially kicked off for this Friday. My name is Josh Benwell, marketing for EPLAN USA. Our web series we've been doing for quite a while now. This is where we chat and talk about EPLAN and answer your questions. It is being recorded. I want to let you know that. Now, if you do have questions, we like to keep it open for you to ask at any time. So you can put a question in the chat. You can raise your hand and we can unmute you and you can ask it at any point in time. This is meant to be interactive so that you're a part of the conversation. With these two experts that we have with us this week, so I'll introduce them. I think that everybody knows you two by now, but I'll go ahead and introduce you anyway. Sean Mulheron, Global Product Manager for EPLAN USA, and well, I guess for EPLAN period. And then Kruno, we went over how I pronounce your last name the other day. Let's see if I get this right. Kutnahorsky?
Yeah, you did it very well.
Oh, okay. Team leader for the value chain. So welcome, guys. Thanks for joining us on this Friday. And I know that you look forward to this for the past 2 weeks to be on the Open Line Friday, especially Kruno, who has said over and over that he's been on Open Line Friday more than anyone else. But Sean's not too far behind you, actually.
I'm trying to catch up, but every time I come on, he's on. So he's always one ahead of me.
How long have you guys worked together? You've been knowing each other for a while now.
Yeah. So we were speaking in the rehearsal the other day. I remember the first time when I met Sean. It's been a while ago, so I just wanted to see if he also remembered it. And incredibly fast, you remembered the date when we saw each other the first time. So it was in my second year at EPLAN at the event in Austria,
in Linz, Austria. Yes, it was a user meet. It was a user meeting, and it was one of my first user meeting that I was attending in Austria. And I just started actually in product management. I think it was my first or second year in product management, and your colleague Robert Erasmus asked me if I could come and help out in Austria, and that's where I met you for the first time. It was cool, and it went downhill ever since. I love it.
Have you been at that time in Europe, or did you flew over from Detroit for that?
No, at the time I was already in Detroit. I used to pendle back and forth, or I still kind of pendle back and forth every month or every other month to the product management department. So I was no, I've been in Detroit since 2004, and then yeah.
What was that first meeting like, Kruno? Because sometimes whenever you have someone that's been in a company for a while, and I'm just speaking from I've done radio for many years, and whenever you have someone that's been at a radio station for a while, they don't like to talk to new people that come around because they don't know how long they're going to be there. And so they don't want to kind of waste their breath, which to me is ridiculous. But how was Sean whenever you first approached him and went to talk to him? Was he approachable?
For me, I kept this ever since, right? When I started to work for EPLAN, it was right on the beginning of my professional career. I was very impressed by colleagues who worked a certain time for the same company, right? Let's say 10 plus, 15 plus years, because they have by default then already a lot of knowledge about products or about the company, and they can share valuable experiences with you, right? So and obviously that company is probably treating them good. Otherwise, they would have been somewhere else, right? And this was how I was meeting Sean for the first time. He had, I don't know, when did you start, Sean? In the early
1993.
1993. So you were already 20 years in the game, right?
Mm-hmm.
The energy which Sean had was very radiating, right? So you could feel that after 20 years he has the passion. Same energy.
It'll make me blush, Kruno.
Same energy.
I'll give you $20. No worries.
It's 50. Yeah, it's actually 50, but it's okay.
Oh shoot, your wages went up.
Yeah, that's the inflation, you know.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
no, jokes aside, Sean did as awesome as ever a presentation about EPLAN, and we were also talking the other day in the rehearsal that the topic which we were talking 10 years ago, it's still the topic we are talking today with our customers, right? So, and that's yeah, it's omnipresent about how can our customers get better, faster, doing less errors, increasing the quality in their engineering to beat their competition, essentially, right?
Yep.
So, Bruno, is Sean your hero here at EPLAN? Or, I mean, it seems that way.
Sean was very impressive because I think you also started in the consulting back in the days, right?
International support. First, I was in the department in Germany, which was international support, taking care of all our distributors. And then I moved into consulting when I was in the US, and then training and all of that. Yeah.
But you were in Canada at some point as well.
I was. In 2001, there was a restructuring of the office in the US, and I decided to go over to Canada and help out my colleague, Roland Junk at the time. I mean, he still runs the Canadian office there. And so it was 3 years of valuable information that we were able to gather in Canada and built the Canadian market. And then in 2004, they asked me because we were two experts in Canada and there was nobody in the US. So they asked me to come back to the US and help out. So I did that. That's how I came back in 2004 in the US.
It's always impressive whenever you have someone that starts with a company and like works their way through the ranks. And somebody else that comes to mind is Talita over in Brazil, who started in, she was a panel builder and then went to EPLAN and she became part of the professional services. And now she's their marketing manager. And she does all their webcast and very talented and able to lend really two different tones from a marketing perspective and from a professional services perspective. So to me, that's that's a good trait. And things change so much as we go on. Like, how much have things changed since you started, Sean? I mean, way back in the day.
A lot. I mean, again, it was fascinating to see how EPLAN kind of grew through the years and how we kind of merged into the Friedel-Mo group as well. When I started, we weren't part of the Friedel-Mo group. It was called Vicious and Partners, so the partner was Mr. Lowe at the time already, but we weren't an integral part of them. And in 1996, Mr. Lowe was in 98. Mr. Lowe decided to purchase the Vicious side, so that's when we integrated. And then to go to the US and to see how the US division kind of grew and started, changing the marketing message and the personnel and things like that. It's been a great ride, and every single colleague I've had along the way, even the ones that kind of left, unfortunately, have been really cool colleagues. I don't know how we did it, but our HR department had some kind of a knack to find the right people to do the right job and good personalities along the way. I mean, Kruno is a perfect example too of the hiring practices that we have. It's just have personality. You can't teach personality. It's something that's within you. You can teach a product, and our HR department was able to kind of see the person, and then afterwards bring them on board, and then make them a great part of the team. And Kruno's a really cool example. A great colleague to have, and it's been a pleasure working with him over the years.
I think this has just become the Kruno and Sean admiring each other. I'm going to leave this and let y'all take over for the rest of the time that we have, and see y'all later. At some point in time, talk about Platform 2023, okay?
I think this was the idea of this Open Line Friday today, right? To show a little bit of admiration. No, but as Sean was saying, and as you were just saying, Josh, one thing which is pretty cool at our company is that you have chances, or the company is giving chances to grow if you want, right? And yeah, that's beautiful. It's not everywhere given, right? That you're getting opportunities.
No, and they're very supportive in that too. They kind of promote you to be more active, to take more leadership character roles, and to kind of show your engagement. And I see that every day as well with colleagues. You know, when you have a user that doesn't just do his job, but kind of goes above and beyond and looking for how can I make this better? How can I improve this at a customer side? Trying to solve problems. A lot of typical employees, they just go, it's an 8 to 5 job, and I start at 8, I finish at 5, and I don't think about the job once I leave. But I mean, when I was as a consultant, I come back home and it's like, well, the customer had this challenge, and I would try and figure out how can I solve it with EPLAN, and what kind of ways are there. And I see that in a lot of my colleagues, you know, trying to figure out ways of making the workflows, the processes within EPLAN a lot better. And I like that, and it's very much encouraged in EPLAN as well to kind of go above and beyond, and it's really cool.
I think the reason why you're doing it, or at least from my perspective, it's because I'm putting myself in the shoes of the customers. I'm thinking, okay, how will I react, or how will I solve it if this will be my problem, if I will be the customer, right? Or this will be my challenge, right? If I want to accomplish something, right? And with this drive, you are helping the customers further than need to, essentially, right?
Yeah. That's one thing I loved when I was in consulting is when you went to a customer and you started off with EPLAN at the beginning, it was like, oh, I've got to learn a new software, and they were kind of resistant to change. And then the more you work with them afterwards, they're like, wow, this is so cool. This is really cool. Oh my goodness, that saves me so much time, and I don't have to do this anymore, and I can spend more time here. And it's just that joy that you saw at the customer after you did the implementation of EPLAN. It was like, wow, this is really cool. So it kind of came back down to you too, and you felt that energy that the customer was taking advantage of. I really like that a lot. It's kind of cool.
I think it's important for us to look at where we've been to see where we are now and then where we're going. And that's the really kind of the glue for us at ePlan and talking about Platform 2023, which we're all so excited about at this point. Well, how did we get to this point, and what did we have to go through? Because efficiencies have gotten so much better since you started, for sure, Sean.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And probably even you, Bruno. I mean, how has that changed? Because we talk about us being efficient engineering. What does that mean to someone that just looks at it as a tagline?
Yeah, I mean, I said I always gladly remember to the moment back when I saw EPLAN the first time in action or at the screen, right? It was now 11 years ago at the fair in Austria. I was back then there as a visitor, and I was walking past a booth which had screens on, and there was like a rotating panel, right? A rotating 3D panel. And I was so much impressed by that fact and said, this is the future, right? It means for anybody who would like to show quality in the industrial automation, this will become necessary at one point, and I better know something about that product, right? So that was 11 years ago when I had my first contact with ePlan. Not 2011, 3D electrical engineering was not the standard, right? Or was I remember how we were saying it, and through the years, as the market grow, as more and more people started to use it, they saw it as a nice to have, right? So it's you're designing your schematic conventionally. You usually do panel layout in 2D, and it's the 3D side of panel layouts is a nice to have, right? Because usually, and we will go deeper historically, when customers spoke about 3D engineering, they meant 3D mechanical design, and this was reserved for a special group of engineers, right? Whilst electrical engineering was doing schematics and, if possible, a 2D panel layout, right? So back in the days, I remember we were saying like the energy from the customers was like 3D panel layout or digital twin or virtual prototyping, however you would like to call it, is a nice to have. But I think around 2013 to 2015, it became almost a must-have, right? If you wanted to be serious about your engineering and your manufacturing, right? Sending data to your manufacturing machines, you essentially needed a 3D panel layout design in order to achieve that, right? So for me, this paradigm shift, or the understanding of our customers that 3D panel layout design is more a must-have than a nice-to-have, was impressive. And if we talk about changes, how fast technology changed, just think about the cloud topic, right? 5 years or 5 years before now, it was more like a dream scenario. In the meantime, the majority of the softwares are working in the cloud environment, right? As EPLAN. Yeah, through the journey, for the last 10 years at EPLAN, one of the most impressive things was that we as a company were spearheading and spearheading technology changes in the CAE industry. So yeah.
I think also the paradigm shift, there was a paradigm shift in the purpose of a panel layout and a panel design. Previously, designing panels was more of a means to an end. And the means to an end was just to build the panel, to have the right dimensions, the right holes, and then just so in a 2D aspect, it was sufficient, and it was really the minimum viable document to be able to produce a control cabinet. That paradigm shift is now the fact that the cabinet lives a lot longer than just the manufacturing process. The cabinet is now integral part of the machine. It's on the plant, it's running, it's turning those motors on and off all day long. And there's the whole maintenance aspect, installation aspect. And if you try and go and do all of that maintenance and troubleshooting with a 2D panel layout on a document, it's impossible. So now the virtual twin just adds that extra dimension to your visualization of the machines, to your troubleshooting, installation and maintenance on the plant floor. And it's becoming more and more visible that that is an integral aspect of now the documentation of that particular cabinet. So the value of the control cabinet, I think, has tremendously increased in terms of within the control system.
That word value brings up a topic in and of itself, where the value chain has been something that Kruno has been very heavily involved in. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that, Kruno?
Essentially, value chain is probably a very broad topic, and people can imagine for themselves what they want to see in it, right? When we speak about, or when I'm talking about value chain, I'm not talking about our value chain, but it's the value chain of our customers, right? And how are they able to from a product life, right, or from a project life, from the beginning when the order comes in until the delivery of the panel or the maintenance, how can they efficiently collaborate through this process and reduce the human error? Or because in this process from A to Z together, right, which are using various type of software, various products, right? And those products need to communicate somehow, right? The most manual way how two people can communicate is probably by word or pen and paper, or by email, or by any type of other formats, right? And if there is a common way of communication when person A says something that person B understands without having to retype it, you're reducing the human error, right? Essentially, value chain from an engineering perspective means digitizing all in order to reduce errors. EPLAN as a software supports our customers in their value chain, right? And depending on what type of a customer we have, their value chain is shorter or longer at the end. Into manufacturing, sometimes even into operations, right?
I mean, the value chain is it's following the steps in engineering, and at each and individual step is adding value to that particular step. So it's in which department, which area. So whether you're starting in design, you're adding value through using EPLAN as a design tool. In the cabinet manufacturing, you're adding value by using ProPanel as an engineering tool. Once you start manufacturing the panel, you're adding value to that aspect because you designed the panel in 3D, and you can leverage the data from that panel in 3D. So all of those steps kind of build upon each other, and at every step you're adding value, and this is kind of also the value chain in that sense.
It's and our job as consultants or advisors, trusted advisors for our customers, are to understand what their current process is, right? And to give the customer recommendations how their process will change if they will utilize our software, right? And the results can be really eye-opening, right? If the customer takes time to inspect their process, their current engineering and manufacturing process, usually it takes a couple of days, right? And you have a pretty good picture on where the bottlenecks are, where the challenges are in the engineering and manufacturing. Yeah, that's probably the biggest joy, is to open the eyes of the customers, right? And say, hey, you're spending, I don't know, 24 to 40 hours on redlining or the communication between the engineering and the PLC software, which can be drastically reduced by proper software.
Mm-hmm. Josh, you mentioned earlier on, or you had the question earlier on, how things have changed from before or early on in the days to now. And I think one of the major aspect of change is that graphical approach versus data-driven approach. It's a complete paradigm shift from the visual to the data behind it and managing that data. And now, when I was in consulting already, in my last years of consulting, I would go to a customer, and the question I ask is, where is your data created? Who handles that data? Where does it go? And what software tools do you use to manage that data? And how many times do you have to re-enter the data? How many duplications of there are? And then suddenly you realize that this same information is in 5 different Excel sheets, is in 5 different drawings, and it's just all over the place. And there's no synchronization, there's no management of it. And this is where the EPLAN solutions and EPLAN tools kind of really help you to take all this data, bring it all into one environment, not duplicate it, have quick access to it, but have it also a very good visualization of that data and being able to follow it through the various different steps of your engineering process.
It's funny how a lot of this is just communication based, that you're making communications easier. Yeah. I know that years ago, one of my clients was a company that they did shutdown turnaround software for shutdowns and turnarounds. And that's what it was, that they needed that communication from one shift to the next so that they could take over what they had already found and looked at. And so when they were doing this shutdown and going through and cleaning everything and seeing what needed to be fixed, that the communication was the biggest part of that. It took the most time, and they were spending 2 hours with the shift turnover to go through that, whenever it should have been a whole lot easier when you have it documented within a software. And that it's the same way with this, that you have it documented within the software where you can turn it over and say, here you go. If you have any questions, you can ask me on here. We can have this chain. Mm-hmm. Again, going back to that, just the communication overall is much better. It's simpler. The days of us relying on an email thread that's about 70 or 80 messages long, we could be done with that stuff.
Absolutely.
I mean, we've all been there where we're searching every message. I know that he said this, or I know that she told me this, and you can't find it in that long email strand. It gets very frustrating.
It's all about communication and collaboration, right?
Yeah.
I think it's not by chance that that you see so many companies, right, which are having collaboration products, right? How to increase wherever people work and however people work or whatever people do together, but how to optimize the communication and collaboration, right? So yeah.
Well, now that Platform 2023 is here, one of the big talks about it and what we kind of base this conversation around is the graphics engine. And Sean, really, what is the change to that, and why is it so important?
Well, it's it's not necessarily a change in functionality. It's more under the hood. Like you have the same framework is there, except that the engine driving that framework has changed. We were based off of OpenGL, which is a graphic engine as well, except that once you start again talking about data, once you look at a control cabinet and you start putting 2 or 3 or 4 control cabinets next to each other, you're increasing the amount of data, you're increasing the amount of information that needs to be rendered, displayed. Then that particular technology that we used in the past is starting to become challenging. It's kind of slowing down, and we needed to change that. So we replaced that with Direct 3D. So now the engine under the hood is Direct 3D to be able to create or promote or provide a much faster rendering of each object and supporting much larger objects, and especially working with the hardware provided by most computers on a much better level. So before we had a graphics card and you had a graphics GPU or the graphical processing unit. Well, it was used, but not optimally. Now Direct 3D really takes full advantage of that. And you notice it in the speed of rendering of that control cabinet, whether it's 1, 2, 3, or even 10 cabinets in one layout space, which is one 3D environment. You'll notice that now you can just move it, zoom in, zoom out, hide entities, you can show entities, and it makes it a lot more fluid for the user to work. And it translates also if you look at when you work on something, let's say you're working on a website and then you click on update and you have to wait 2 seconds. And if you multiply those 2 seconds times 50 interactions with the website, then it becomes a long time. And then you notice the lag in the software and it's not much fun to work with. So once you take that away, and now this rendering and the speed and access of viewing those models makes it fun again, and it's really nice to see that. So I think it's a really cool change and upgrade.
It's like a Ford Mustang GT versus a Ford Mustang Shelby, or it's probably not called Ford.
Yes.
Shelby, right? I'm laughing because you said this 2 seconds. Sean, do you remember, like, what was it, version 2.3 or 2.4, where we merged the insert symbol macro and insert window macro together?
Yeah.
You can remember, right? So right after that happened, I remember I was doing support and the customer called and complained why this happened, right? Now he said, I have to do now one additional click, right? After I'm doing insert window symbol macro to differentiate which of those I have to select, right? Because you can still afterwards search it, right? And I said, are you now seriously complaining about this one additional second or two additional seconds, right? And he was basing it the justification exactly like what you just said, right? 2 additional seconds per, I don't know,
1,000 macros a day or 100 macros a day.
Project. Just think about it. Yeah, but the truth, of course, is that the majority of the macros anyhow were EMA macros, so you don't need this additional filter. But it was interesting, so I was just had a flashback when you said 2 seconds.
But to come back to that too, if you look at, I was reading back in the days when the iPhone first came out, and Android, I think Android was not on the market yet. It was more Nokia's and things like that. But I think when Android first came out to compete with the iPhone, there was a difference in the responsiveness of the software. Like you would click on something and the iPhone would respond faster. And they did a study, and I think it was the iPhone interface was 5 milliseconds faster in terms of responsiveness. 5 milliseconds, it's not necessarily a lot, but when you do hundreds of interactions, when you scroll constantly, when you type after it adds up, and it it carried over to the smoothness of the way the software was handling. So in that perspective, you know, every second counts, so to speak. So
Well,
we,
now you
we,
can
we
understand whenever we talk about people putting in overtime and fulfilling every bit of a 40-hour work week back in say 2000, when you open a website that you have to use for work and you have to line by line is popping up.
you still hear the sound of that modem going on, the 56K modem trying to load that
Exactly.
website. Oh,
The amount of technology that we've had in the past 50 years is astounding. And I
absolutely.
feel like one thing that ePlan does a really good job of is that they keep up with that technology, whether it be, you know, talking about the graphics engine, or whenever we talked to Simon Ebert a couple of weeks ago, and he was showing us the AR capabilities. And the AR capabilities right now, he has it all in a handheld mode, and that could be changing too. There's so much that ePlan really takes into consideration whenever we want to make this more efficient and more user friendly. That whenever you get these new platforms in 2022 and 2023 and whatever's next after this, that it is making things way more efficient for the user.
And it's an important part of our development process within ePlan as well. It's mandatory every single version of ePlan that we look at the technologies out there. What is out there? What are we using today? Is it enough? Is the updated technology? And we always try, if there's, for example, a core driver that we use, we look at what is the latest one. Let's implement that one. And it takes resources and time, of course, but we want to make sure that we're always on the top end of technology and using the latest and greatest, because it also provides new opportunities. Like updating to a new technology gives you suddenly some new things that you can implement in the software that you weren't able to do before because the driver or the technology you have was not up to par. And that's definitely within the ePlan development process a core aspect of always making sure that, hey, let's check what technology there is out there. Is there something better? Is there something we can change and things like that? So we're very aware of that. Yeah.
Maybe one thing, I mean, obviously our communication or the invitation to this Open Line Friday was 3D engineering, right? The truth is, a lot of customers are not using yet for electrical engineering a 3D software like EPLAN Pro Panel. There are two topics which we may or should discuss about is how to take away if customers are afraid maybe to go for a 3D panel layout design because they only know what they know, right? They're comfortable with the way how they did electrical engineering for the last 20, 30 years. That means what if a customer is afraid of using 3D software instead of 2D software? Of course, I have here my opinion and I would like to know yours. And the other topic is you are bringing a 3D software or you're approaching a new company, right? And even if the electrical engineering department likes that, they are now saying, okay, we will use a 3D software to do electrical engineering design. And suddenly the alarm bells rings and say, hey, 3D engineering, 3D software for engineering, why? We already have a 3D mechanical software. So those are two, I think, very important topics for our customers, right? To overcome the fear of utilizing 3D software, and how can a 3D electrical engineering software like EPLAN Pro Panel coexist with a 3D mechanical software, whatever the name of this is.
And I'll tag on to that, you know, if you're stuck in a 2D world, then what does that conversion look like?
Yeah.
So
the 3D, it's a very good point you make there, Kruno, because 3D has historically always been a mechanical topic. I mean, the mechanical engineering department always had 3D tools, and or as soon as they came out, they started implementing them. They saw the benefits because mechanical is very physical. It's very, it's shapes, it's forms, it's things that are visible. Now, when we talk about controls design is the only thing you see is the control cabinet from the outside. you barely open the door, and all you do is if you open the door, well, what's in there? It's only an electrical guy that knows. And so the 3D requirements for an electrical engineer have always been less. And traditionally, over the years too, it's always been the fact that since they do 2D, okay, we give the 3D tools to all the mechanical guys, but the electrical guy doesn't need it. He's just going to do a 2D layout, and that's fine. And one of the challenges was the complexity of the 3D tool. If you look at mechanical 3D design tools, they're for modeling. So you need to know your mechanical forms, shapes, and extrusions, and how you're going to put that model together. It's quite complicated. I mean, mechanical engineering is a study of its own, and it's pretty tough. And nobody wanted to go into that space. So because the tools as well are pretty complicated to build those 3D models. But what we realize is when we look at the electrical engineers, they don't have that requirement. They don't have to model and build a contactor. They don't have to model a motor. They don't have, all they have to do is take that equipment and place it on a DIN rail, snap it, or just put it on the back plate. They just have to do a cutout, put it on the door, or put some plugs on the side panels of the control cabinet. So the requirements from a 3D perspective for an electrical controls designer are completely different. And that means that from a software perspective as well, the amount of functionality, the amount of complexity is less. You don't need to extrude anything. You don't need to have all of those fancy mechanical functions within a 3D software to able to create 3D for a controls designer. So this is where ProPanel was born. ProPanel is born from that, where we just said, hey, we'll create a 3D environment, and let's just allow the user to download models or create, or not even create models, but download models, identify the mounting surfaces, and start putting his components on those surfaces. And that's all he needs. You know, I mean, again, the routing and things like that are some additional topics, but it's very basic. And this is something that also kind of, I see it as a little bit of a revolution in the 3D world, because it allows other people that are not 3D savvy, that are not 3D mechanical engineers, to have access to 3D and leverage the 3D capabilities for their benefits, for their values, and in creating the panel and suddenly having a completely different view over the work that they used to do in 2D.
So as you're saying, just to summarize or keep it very simple, with a 3D electrical engineering software like ProPanel, you are not stepping on anybody's toes who is doing mechanical engineering in 3D, because the usage of the software is a different one. The application is a different one, right? And I like to always summarize it, or I like to say, EPLAN ProPanel does not have a 3D kernel, right, to do those designs. So that means even if somebody needs to design mechanical or design 3D components, this will still be done in a software or in 3D mechanical software. In ProPanel, we are just utilizing the data, and I think the data aspect is a key topic to answer the first question, right? How if a customer is afraid of the third dimension when it comes to panel layout, how to take away the what's it called, when the customers are afraid, right? So how to take away the fear of the customer. So how are you going over that?
The fear, I mean, the fear is the unknown. And once you give them a simple tool, I mean, training inside of ProPanel is pretty quick. Within a couple of days, you're already working fluently with a software package. And once you start realizing the benefits you have, I mean, one aspect that people completely or ignore most of the times are the clearances on devices. You have a PLC, and the PLC on top of it, you have heat expansion. So when you look at the manual, it says, please allow for 2 inches of clearance above and below the PLC module. And when you look at the panels, they cramp them in because they're trying to gain some space, and now they put them too close, and those clearances are completely ignored. Well, you look at ProPanel now, designing in 3D, you put your block, and suddenly you can say, my clearance is 2 inches, show me that clearance is, and you can display it, so you have a visual. So now each component, you can visualize how the clearances are and make sure that you're organizing your components in a way that they don't interfere with each other. Just that small little thing, I think, is huge, and you can't really do that in 2D because you're missing the third dimension of the clearance as well.
Yeah, I think regardless how good you are doing 2D panel layout design, you will never be able to be as accurate as if you're doing it in a 3D software, right? And this can have a huge impact, right? You are saying mounting clearance, it goes hand in hand with the collision control and in general, right? It means customers are driven, or some customers are driven really to optimize their space, right? And what does this mean? To place as many components in as small space as possible, right? What does this mean? It increases the error possibility of a collision significantly, right? And you cannot do this in 2D, right? How are you able to count in the depth of a placement which is impacting another surface, right? And the only answer is like the majority of the answers we are getting from our customers is experience, right? But what if the experience is not there anymore, right? So that means this is important. I think one other reason to take away the fear of a customers moving to 3D is just the amount or the ease of the usage, right? So the truth is, anyhow, even if you are designing the panel in 3D, 80% of the time, maybe 90% of the time, you're looking from the front on the cabinet, right? So it looks exactly on the mounting panel or the door. It looks exactly the same. You have just much more information and much easier to work with, right? And yeah, there are many more perks, like having manufacturing related information on the tip of your finger, right? It means probably one of the nicest or most visible things is the drilling information. That means as soon as you place a drillable component, a wire duct mounting rail, or any component which is placed on the back panel of the door, you see the drilling information and you can utilize it, right?
I have another concrete example, which is a customer which I shall not name, and a component manufacturer which I shall not name. Well, the component manufacturer provided a drive, and the customer was installing that drive, and the drive was constantly failing. So they were asking the component manufacturer to fix the drive. So they analyzed the drive, and the drive was fine. It was the way that the drive was put in the control cabinet, and they were routing the control wires with the power wires in the same wire duct. And next thing you know, it was for them, it was a common practice. And next thing you know, it was creating interference with that signal that was going from the drive to the motor, and it was failing. And those are things as well within the Pro Panel environment. You can specify which cables, which wires go into which duct. So you can separate AC from DC. You can put low voltage in one, control in the other, and make sure that they don't overlap. And those are all topics that at the end of the day create a huge amount of challenges down the line, because that panel was failing and it was stopping the machine from working. Where if you use the right tool to design and you figure those issues up early enough, then you don't have those issues and you don't have what happening down the line in terms of troubleshooting and maintenance. So
when you're saying troubleshooting, I'm also thinking about those images behind you, right? And you see cooling components, right? How are majority of our customers who need cooling components calculating the right climate solution, right? The answer is probably Excel, right? That means they have a component list. They are selecting, and they are approximately summing up the components where they know the power dissipation, but because they are not sure, they are overspecking it, right? That leads to a more expensive component which they are placing.
stronger cooling, which can create problems, issues as well if you cool too much.
Exactly, and because it's overspec, it turns constantly on and off. That means you have a higher. You're paying more, and you're paying more. And the lifespan is probably shorter, and you paying more energy for the upkeeping of it, right? So even if this seems like a common practice, right? Because how will the customer know that there is a different way? Right? Because that's all what we know. Counting with Excel, better be safe than sorry, right? Adding some 20% spare on it. And Yeah, but there is another way with EPLAN, right? And when you use ProPanel, you have the possibility with the thermal design integration to have a proper calculation and additional features if you're using retail cooling components.
Yep, to visualize the flow of the air within the cabinet, to visualize the high density areas, the hot pockets, so to speak. You can see which device is hotter than another, and those are all topics that today are ignored a lot of times because they don't have the means to do it. And if they were to try and do it in a real 3D simulation software, it'd be way too expensive. So now we provide that in ProPanel, and it gives the controls designer really a good idea of what type of cooling equipment he needs for that particular application.
You know what the point is, Sean? Who cares about the cost?
Yeah.
The customer is asking themselves this question and try to find the answer, then you suddenly understand why a software like ProPanel can solve much more than just the engineering task, because our software is way more than just engineering software, right? We're caring essentially for the processes of our customers and also for the cost of the whole product, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I think that's.
I was going to say real quick, by the way, if anyone has a question, we would love to get those in. If not, Bruno will run with this thing out the door. And so you can leave those in the chat, or you can raise your hand to ask a question of either Sean or Bruno. So please do. So I want to make sure, Bruno, you're able to finish up your thought there.
Yeah, I was just looking at the time. We only have 13 minutes left. Josh, maybe you have some additional questions for us.
Well, I wanted to talk about
David was asking about one of these shirts, but, if he could have one. Well,
Okay,
I was lucky enough to work a show. We worked an automation fair, and for that fair, we got these shirts made to kind of represent, to know that which company we're coming from. So unfortunately, I don't have any spares, but I think I'm going to give you a feedback to marketing, and we should put some of these shirts in the EPLAN shop and the online shop, and maybe they'll be able to purchase. But
so it's funny you mentioned that. We've had a lot of conversations about this recently. Sarah and I, Sarah is in the marketing operation side, and so what our feedback was from just about everyone except for Alessandro was that we needed to get the certain type of shirt, the Under Armour shirt. And that's the same thing that you told me. So we're kind of going back and forth about this whole shirt situation, but we'll have a solution for you very soon.
Would you mind to disclose what Alessandro's opinion was?
No, that's a different conversation.
We'll leave Alessandro talk about it next time he's on a Open Line Friday.
I assume he the Giorgio Armani shirt or something.
The material is really nice. It's soft, it's cotton, it's nice. But the other material, which is the Under Armour, is kind of different. So it depends on which one you prefer.
Yeah, it depends on how much you sweat, I guess.
That's right.
So just to kind of to mention more about Platform 2023, Sean, what are some of the other things that you can talk about before we're done with this? Some of the other highlights.
So in Platform 2023, I think the major highlights would be the international macros management. What that means is when you have a part number, for example, an Allen Bradley part or a Siemens part or a Schneider part, and you want to place that part on a schematic, depending on the standard that you place it on. If you place it on an IEC standard, you will work in millimeters, it'll have a certain size, the orientation of the pins will be in a certain way. Now, if you want to use that same part in the North American market, you have to do a rotation by 90 degrees, you have to mirror it, and then you have to scale it to be able to match an inch grid. So today that work is very tedious, and on top of that is managing that part in EPLAN today. Before version 2023, you had to create two macros, you had to create two parts, you had to duplicate the information, so it was very tough. With version 2023, we combined all of that together. So now you can manage one part number. Within that part number, you can manage your IEC macro, your NFPA macro, your various different corporate standard macros if you want to, all within that part. So it makes it a lot easier for the user to interact now with the design environment, where he just selects his template, for example, IEC template, drags his part, and automatically the IEC macro comes along. Or he has a North American macro schematic, and then he takes that same part, drags the part onto the drawing, and he has the North American macro come up. So it really facilitates the design and the management of data now with that international macros technology that we implemented. And then another couple of things we did too is the Insert Center. So the Insert Center came in version 2022 to be able to combine the insertion of symbols, of macros, of devices to make it easier for the user to have kind of a one-stop shop. And there were a few features missing in the way that we displayed the information, the way we searched for the information. So we've added a whole bunch of little things in the Insert Center that now makes it a lot easier for the user to find whether he's looking for symbols specifically or devices, or even if he has multiple devices to see exactly the one that he's looking for. So those are all kind of features that we've added to that to benefit the user experience in that aspect.
Cable editor?
The cable editor as well. So if you know EPLAN, you probably know that for years we've had the terminal editor. And I was lucky enough, I think it was back in 2013, one of my first agenda points in product management was like, I want a cable editor. We had one, but it was very tough to visualize. It was very tough to understand. So we got that cable editor done. And then I put as a next topic, I said, I want a cable editor, the same way that we have the terminal editor. And we finally were able to put that in as well. So that's coming with 2023. And now you can visualize the cable, you can see all the conductors, you can see the source, the target, you can see which conductors are shielded together. If they're pair conductors or twisted pairs, you can visualize that. So, I mean, we are very visual. It's easier to visualize something than to try and read a line of text and understand what's behind that text. Because one, you have the reading, two, you have the understanding and the interpretation. With a picture, you just look at it and you understand right away what it is. So that's why trying to bring all these visual aspects into the platform, I think makes a lot of sense, and just figuring out where exactly. But I think the cable editor is now a nice little tool that's going to evolve as well. I mean, this is the first version, and we're going to keep working at it and get customer feedback on that too. But I think it turned out pretty cool.
I guess the question is, if you have an earlier version, then why should someone make that jump to 2023? And really, what does the change look like as far as the workflow perspective?
I mean, the biggest change from a user interface perspective was between 2.9 and 2022, which was last year, where we completely redesigned the user interface. And that meant, I didn't even know that at first. I thought we had like 1,500 functions. No, we had over 2,000 functions that we had to reorganize and put into ribbons and put into tabs. And so that was a tremendous amount of work, just trying to figure out how we're going to organize these functions and which groups and which tabs and put everything together. But I think we did a really good work there trying to put it together. And we're listening to feedback as we speak on to maybe we want to change some things, move things around, and we're completely open to that. But in terms of why move to this new version, again, the user interface is a huge driver. I had a customer tell me, it's like, now I can access every function of EPLAN within 2 clicks. You click on the tab and then you click on the icon and you're done. So already the user interface kind of facilitates the onboarding, I would say, of the software. If we have new users jumping into EPLAN, it's very similar to what they see in Excel, what they see in Word, what they see in maybe AutoCAD that they've been using in the past. So there's a familiarity within the software that helps you to jump in pretty quickly. And the Insert Center is also an aspect where instead of having 3 different dialogues and 3 different ways of working, we have one single centralized aspect, which helps you really jump in and use that and leverage that. So I think it's really really cool.
If a customer can, then they definitely should upgrade to the most recent version, right? So it's as we were speaking in the rehearsal, it sometimes customer cannot upgrade because they are a supplier in the automotive industry and they are doomed to work in a certain version for a couple of years, right? But if the customer has no restrictions in the usage of the version, then it's always good to read through the news and see what was a recent change which makes the work in the software more easy, and then just to upgrade it, right? Because to your question, Josh, the migration works, right? Pretty easy. right? It's just for the customers, as Sean said, between 2.9 and 2022, the interface changed, right? But EPLAN as a software was not rotated by 180 degrees, right? It's still the same efficient software. The methodology inside of the software is the same, and just takes maybe some time to use. For myself also, right? I think it took me 4 months approximately until I said, okay, it's good that there is a new software, because I was using 10 years the old right. But yeah.
Hey, I got a question for both of you as far as soccer. This is nothing related to EPLAN, but you both have the same favorite soccer team. Is that right? The favorite soccer club that you both root for the same one?
No, this is not right. We genuinely dislike dislike the teams, but yeah. So maybe for the context, if we have I think I seen international guests also. So on the net. So Sean's favorite team is Liverpool FC, and my favorite soccer team is Chelsea. So.
And it's kind of weird because if you look at my family, I have my aunt, which is a Manchester United fan, and my cousins are Tottenham Hotspur fans. Friends of mine are Arsenal fans. I really don't have any Liverpool affiliation in my near vicinity of the family. However, I looked at pictures of me as a 5-year-old kid, and I'm wearing a Liverpool jersey. So somebody was smart enough to just give me that as a kid. Brainwashed me from the get-go, so I've been a Liverpool fan all my life. Yeah.
How many Super Bowls have they won?
You wish. They don't play football; they play soccer, but it should be football, really.
And what is your team, Chrono?
Chelsea.
Okay, Chelsea. Have I know that soccer is something that you both love, but what about American football? Have you come to love a team here in the States?
I do. I don't know about Sean.
I was brainwashed. So the first time I landed in the US, I landed in Chicago, but our offices was in Brookfield, Wisconsin. So I moved to Wisconsin. I stayed there for 6 months, and I got a group of friends that I met there, and they brainwashed me into like the Green Bay Packers. So the Green Bay Packers it is.
You see, Sean, the Green Bay Packers and Liverpool are very similar. Like they had like 30, 40 years ago some success and fame, and they're living on the tradition since ever. In the recent years, both were pretty good, but I mean, Liverpool won even the Champions League a couple of years ago. So
Yeah. So what's your team, Kruno?
in football,
Yeah.
it's the Cleveland Browns.
Oh.
We are close to a Super Bowl run. It will happen.
What?
I think that's what the Detroit Lions have been saying as well. So I think the rivalry is between the Lions and the Browns is who's going to be last this season.
No, this year will be really good for the Cleveland Browns because nobody counts with us, right? There is some scandal which we don't need to talk about.
What, the Kardashians?
Yeah, almost as horrible as the Kardashians around the Cleveland Browns. So everybody's counting us out this year. So there is only one way for us, and that's up.
I'm a
And
Saints fan.
you played football, Kruno, didn't you? American football?
Yes, I played American football for a couple of years, and
Where?
in Austria.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm a New Orleans Saints fan. I'm from Louisiana, and I liked them since we had paper bags because they were so bad. So if you go through that, then you can be a fan forever.
David in the chat says, "Go Ravens."
Huh.
Go Ravens.
Go Ravens. I don't know. They're having some trouble with Lamar right now because they couldn't come to an agreement as far as what he wants to be paid. So we'll see how that goes. Guys, thanks so much. I mean, this has been a really awesome conversation. Thanks for joining us for Open Line Friday yet again. Sean, Kruno, have yourself a fantastic weekend. By the way, we have Derek Santa Maria that is going to go through a complete deep dive into Platform 2023. We kind of glossed over some things. Derek's going to do, and Derek does a fantastic job. He's going to do a deep dive into that on September 20th, and that you'll be able to find on LinkedIn soon. So you could register for that and be a part of. It's not Open Line Friday. It's going to be a full webcast of just Derek talking about Platform 2023 that I'm very excited about.
EPLAN
So,
under the hood.
yes, under the hood. That's right. So thanks, guys, for joining us today. Have a great weekend. Chris, you have something to say before we go?
Oh, it was a pleasure. Thanks for tuning in. See you next time.